Okay, so I'm going to use this assignment as an example because I think this is the one that you were referencing during our conversation, that you didn't understand which you could cut out of these subjects in order to shorten the assignment. And that's why I just shorter assignments doesn't get to the root of what the accommodation actually is. Because in this case, the appropriate accommodation isn't shortening the assignment per se. It's actually breaking it into chunks to reduce working memory load. So a dyspraxic student walks into an assignment like this, and what their brain has to do is identify what are they supposed to be doing? What are the instructions? What are the questions now they have to answer? Retrieve that information or go find that information and then come back, still remembering it, and composing an answer. So to reduce working memory load, we need to remove anything that impedes or is an extra step they have to add on to that direct task of what's the subject, what do I need to do to answer the question? What kind of question is this? What is the format? So you start up here with key question. Was the North or South responsible for provoking the Civil War? For most students, that would help them remember what to look for while they're answering the rest of these questions before they get down to that third page where you have it as a longer essay question. For a dyspraxic student, you've just given them a piece of information they're supposed to remember, but they can't do anything with it because it says key question, was the North or South responsible for provoking the Civil War? But that's not the question they're answering in the immediate assignment. So if we're adjusting this for a dyspraxic student, we would remove that key question at the beginning. The other thing we would do right here under directions where it says use TCI lessons to complete the following is we would emphasize that you need to answer these questions in your own words. And I see that you have those here, summarize the event, your own words, north, south. But for a dyspraxic student, having those directions all in the same place helps their brain process them as one slot of working memory instead of 2 or 3. So those instructions, summarizing the event, using your own words, put that right up here with the directions. Then, the rest is the same. All the rest of this assignment is absolutely appropriate for a dyspraxic student. Though when Sam was talking to me about this assignment, he did say his brain got really overloaded because he had said that the references for these blocks here, that there had been typos in them, they hadn't been properly updated. So then students had to stop and copy that down from the board. Copying anything on a board or as oral instructions is one of the most difficult tasks that dyspraxic students do. Because just like with dyslexic students, they have trouble with processing information and switching between visual objects quickly. So whether it is written on the board or you're saying to them how to change each one of these, they have to stop, they have to look at it, they have to remember it, they have to go then switch to the page, find the right place, copy and change it. If there are any oral instructions being given during that time or people are discussing any other subject, they've completely lost it. It's gone. It's not in their head. They weren't able to process that. There's also a really high likelihood that they're going to copy the wrong references, simply because those kinds of typos and transference and translation in the traditional object sense of translating something from one location to another, that skill is very likely to be interrupted or distorted. So when something like this happens, one of the best things you can do for a dyspraxic student is either go to their computer yourself and update it, just check and make sure they got the right references, or go in and update it yourself, or provide them with a written list of the correct references. This means we're preventing, before it happens, the problem of dyspraxic students then having to, when they want to answer this question and make sure they're getting it right, they have to read what it was, find the section. Now remember, they have trouble switching between 2 objects at the same time. It's like the desk they're working on is too small. They can't have 2 books open at the same time and move between them quickly. So they've got to have one way over here on another desk and one in front of them. So when they have to move from this assignment here, go and click on the textbook And Sam showed me, you have to be logged into the textbook, you have to sign in, you have to find the right section, make sure you copied down the correction right, then you have to go to the section, you have to read through and try to find the relevant information. You then have to read the relevant information and figure out how to summarize. You have to remember it there in both your working and short-term memory. And remember, dyspraxic students have excellent long-term memory and horrible short-term memory. So they have to remember what it was, they have to come back then, flip back to a new location, and then figure out how to organize that information into a new answer. Each one of those little micro transitions between reading, another window being open on their computer, another drop down they have to go to, all the words they have to dig through, all of that is a very heavy dyspraxic working memory load. And anytime you put a higher dyspraxic load on a student, you then have to compensate by lowering the dyspraxic load, the working memory load, in another place. So for instance, here, instead of expecting them to write sentences, you might specifically put in the directions that they can answer in bullet points. Because being able to use bullet points and incomplete sentences to give the same information means that they don't have to put that extra step of working memory into figuring out how to perfectly organize this information. Because paragraphs are complicated. And it's not that a dyspraxic student can't write paragraphs. It's that the more working load you've put on them, if you expect them to answer these in a short time frame, which means they have to use short-term memory, which has issues, you have to remove another stressor from them. It's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole, right? And you have to balance the levels to make sure that the total assignment addresses their working memory capacity. Then, at the end of the assignment is where we would move this key question again. It would be moved down there, or it would be a separate assignment. I've seen this before in Google Classroom. You will have the specific assignment, but it'll be broken into 2 documents in Google Classroom they can click on. So it would be one would be filling this out. And then what you might do, since you're going to look at it the next day to see if they got it right, is say, for tomorrow, prepare to give an opinion on, was the North or South responsible for provoking the Civil War? And that might be a question that you grab Sam quick and you ask him to answer orally to you. So you would give this broken into a different chunk, not all in the big same assignment, and you might say, hey, based off of this paper, make some notes about who you think was responsible, and then you're going to explain that to me tomorrow. Or you might ask him to record it as a video or an oral, an audio recording that he can upload and you can listen to. In the past, it's been really successful for teachers, including social studies teachers, to say, hey, Sam, after you've completed this, make me a video. That also builds on his strengths because he is an extremely visual dyspraxic learner, and one of his big strengths is graphic design and video editing. That's what we mean when we discuss alternative answering methods. You might also break the assignment into a few different chunks. The first section might be 4 or 5 of these that he does in class, and then he might have another 4 or 5 that he does as homework, because that means both visually and intellectually, he is assessing this in smaller chunks. His brain has less to deal with. Another aid would be using the Google Fonts feature to put this in a dyslexic-friendly font instead of a standard one. Because dyspraxic students have intermittent dyslexia symptoms, so they benefit strongly from dyslexic fonts. And again, I just want to emphasize that I am the expert on dyspraxia. Sam is the expert on how dyspraxia affects him at any given moment and what has worked best for him. And you are the expert on your class and the curriculum. My job and Sam's case manager's job is to show up and provide resources. We are always open to new ideas from your expertise on how to implement these accommodations.